Between ages 70 and 85, there are 5 specific signs that often appear roughly a year before someone reaches the end of their life. Not everyone shows all 5, and they don't always arrive in the same order. But when you start seeing these patterns emerge, your loved one's body is sending a clear message. The problem is that most people don't recognize what they're looking at until it's too late. Understanding these signs isn't about creating fear, it's about giving you time. Time to make different choices, have important conversations, and ensure the people you care about spend their final months surrounded by comfort instead of confusion. Because once you know what to watch for, everything changes. Let's start with something that seems almost too obvious to mention, yet it's the one sign families most often misinterpret. Unexplained weight loss that won't stop. You might notice a belt buckle moving in a notch, pants that suddenly need suspenders, a wedding ring that spins freely on a finger where it once fit snugly. These aren't just cosmetic changes. When someone between 70 and 85 starts losing weight without trying, without dieting, without any intentional effort, something fundamental is shifting inside their body. This isn't about losing 5 pounds. We're talking about steady, progressive weight loss that continues week after week, even when the person seems to be eating normally. What's actually happening? Their digestive system is slowly losing its ability to extract nutrients from food. The small intestine isn't absorbing proteins the way it used to. The stomach produces less acid, making it harder to break down what they eat. Meanwhile, their metabolism is redirecting energy away from building muscle and toward maintaining vital organs. But there's another layer most people miss entirely. Appetite itself changes at the neurological level. The brain stops sending hunger signals with the same intensity. Food that once tasted delicious now seems bland or unappealing. Many elderly individuals simply stop feeling hungry, not because they're depressed or stubborn, but because their body is fundamentally reprioritizing its remaining resources. You'll see this play out in subtle ways. They'll start serving themselves smaller portions without commenting on it. They'll leave food on their plate more often. When you ask if they want seconds, they'll decline, even though they used to love that dish. Some families respond by cooking favorite meals or buying expensive supplements, hoping to reverse the trend. Here's what you need to understand. If the weight loss continues despite your efforts, despite encouragement, despite offering every food they've ever enjoyed, you're not looking at a dietary problem. You're witnessing the body's preparation for its final transition. At this stage, pushing large meals often creates more discomfort than benefit. The loss of muscle mass that accompanies this weight loss creates a cascade of additional problems. Weakened legs make walking harder. Reduced core strength affects balance. Arms that once carried groceries now struggle with a coffee mug. And perhaps most concerning, the immune system weakens significantly when the body lacks adequate protein, leaving the person vulnerable to infections that become increasingly difficult to fight off. Watch for rapid changes. If your parent loses 10 pounds in 2 months, that's concerning. If they lose 20 pounds in 6 months and it's still continuing, their body is telling you something critical. This is especially significant if they've maintained a stable weight for years or even decades before this sudden decline. Some medical conditions cause weight loss, certainly. Cancer, heart failure, kidney disease, thyroid problems. But when you're seeing this pattern in someone over 70, combined with increasing frailty and declining interest in food, you're often looking at something broader than a single diagnosis. You're seeing the body's systems beginning to wind down together. What should you do? First, stop trying to force the issue. Comfort matters more than calories now. Offer small portions of foods that are easy to eat and digest. Smoothies, soups, soft proteins. Keep them hydrated. And most importantly, recognize what this change represents. This is your signal to start having conversations you've been avoiding, to make sure legal documents are in order, to ask about wishes and preferences while your loved one can still clearly express them. Because weight loss like this rarely reverses, and what comes next often arrives faster than families expect. But weight loss is just the beginning. There's another sign that's even more telling, one that affects every single moment of every single day, and it's the reason many families finally realize something has fundamentally changed. That sign is extreme fatigue, not the kind where a nap helps. We're talking about exhaustion so profound that getting dressed feels like running a marathon. You'll notice them sleeping more during the day. 10 in the morning, they're napping. 2 in the afternoon, asleep in the recliner. They might tell you they slept fine last night, but an hour after breakfast, they're already back in bed. This isn't laziness or boredom. Their body is shutting down non-essential functions to preserve what little energy remains. The heart isn't pumping blood as effectively anymore. When circulation slows, muscles receive less oxygen. Less oxygen means every movement requires exponentially more effort than it did 6 months ago. Walking to the bathroom becomes a task they need to mentally prepare for. Showering leaves them breathless and needing to lie down afterward. But here's what catches families off guard. The fatigue isn't consistent. Some days they seem almost normal, chatting during lunch, maybe even suggesting a short walk outside. Then the next day they can barely lift their head from the pillow. These fluctuations make it easy to convince yourself things aren't that serious. You think maybe they're just having an off day, maybe they didn't sleep well, maybe it's the weather. Watch how they move when they do get up. Do they pause halfway through standing? Do they grip the armrest longer than necessary before taking a step? These aren't just signs of weakness. They're evidence that their body is rationing energy, deciding which movements are worth the expenditure and which aren't. The emotional toll of this fatigue often gets overlooked. Someone who spent 50 years being self-sufficient now needs help with tasks a 5-year-old can manage. That's not just physically exhausting, it's devastating to their sense of identity. Many elderly people in this stage stop asking for help not because they don't need it, but because admitting they need it feels like admitting defeat. They'll try to hide how tired they are. Your mother will insist she's fine, even though you just watched her take 3 breaks while walking from the car to the front door. Your father will wave off your concern, saying he's just getting older, even though he's sleeping 16 hours a day. This denial isn't stubbornness. It's fear of becoming a burden mixed with grief over losing their independence. Then there's the cognitive impact nobody warns you about. Severe fatigue doesn't just affect the body. When the brain isn't getting adequate blood flow and oxygen, thinking becomes harder. They might lose track of conversations mid-sentence. Simple decisions like what to eat for dinner suddenly feel overwhelming. You'll ask a straightforward question and watch them struggle to formulate an answer, not because they don't understand, but because their brain is too exhausted to process information efficiently. Some families respond by encouraging more activity. Thinking movement will boost energy levels. Get up and walk around. Come sit outside for a while. Let's go to the store together. But pushing someone in this stage often backfires spectacularly. After a forced outing, they might spend the next 3 days recovering, even more depleted than before. Their body simply doesn't have reserves to draw from anymore. You'll also notice they stop initiating activities they once enjoyed. The woman who loved gardening doesn't mention her plants anymore. The man who never missed the evening news falls asleep before it starts. They're not losing interest in life. They're losing the energy required to engage with it. And here's something most people don't realize until they're living through it. Fatigue like this changes how someone experiences time. When you're exhausted every waking moment, days blur together. They might not remember what happened yesterday because yesterday felt exactly like today, which will feel exactly like tomorrow. Everything becomes a haze of tiredness punctuated by brief moments of alertness. What should you do? Stop trying to motivate them into activity. Their body is conserving energy for a reason. Let them rest when they need to rest. Bring conversations to them instead of expecting them to come to you. Keep visits shorter, but more frequent. 20 minutes of quality interaction beats 2 hours that leaves them drained for days. This is also the time to handle practical matters they use to manage themselves. Bills, appointments, phone calls. Take those responsibilities off their plate without making a big production of it. The goal isn't to take over their life. It's to reduce the energy expenditure required to maintain it. But as challenging as this exhaustion is to witness, there's another change happening simultaneously that's even more unsettling. It affects how they think, how they communicate, and whether they even recognize you're in the room. And once you understand what's actually happening in their brain during this stage, you'll see their behavior in a completely different light. Sign number 3, cognitive decline and mental withdrawal. The confusion starts gradually. Your father asks what day it is 3 times in an hour. Your mother tells you the same story she told you 20 minutes ago, completely unaware she's repeating herself. They might stare blankly when you mention a grandchild's name, someone they've known since birth. These aren't just senior moments. This is the brain responding to reduced blood flow and oxygen deprivation. As circulation weakens, the brain receives less of what it needs to function properly. Neural pathways that once fired automatically now struggle. Processing information takes longer. Retrieving memories becomes harder. The person might know they recognize you, but can't immediately place how they know you. It's terrifying for them, even if they can't articulate that terror. You'll notice they lose track of conversations mid-sentence. You're discussing dinner plans and suddenly they're asking about a neighbor who moved away 5 years ago. Time becomes fluid. Yesterday blends with last week. Events from decades ago feel more real than what happened this morning. This temporal confusion isn't dementia in the traditional sense. It's the brain rationing its limited resources, prioritizing essential functions over chronological accuracy. Some people become fixated on the past. They want to talk about their childhood, their parents, events from 50 years ago. This isn't random nostalgia. The brain is processing their life, reviewing what mattered most. Let them have these conversations. Don't correct them when details are wrong. The emotional truth matters more than factual accuracy right now. Others go quiet instead. They'll sit for hours without speaking, staring at nothing in particular. This isn't depression, though it looks similar. Their brain simply doesn't have energy for verbal communication anymore. Processing your words, formulating responses, engaging socially, all of this requires cognitive resources they no longer possess in abundance. The silence isn't rejection, it's conservation. Watch for emotional flatness. Someone who cried at commercials and laughed at terrible jokes might stop reacting to anything. They're not becoming cold or indifferent. The emotional centers of their brain are being affected by the same circulation problems impacting everything else. They still feel, but expressing those feelings takes more energy than they have available. Decision-making becomes impossible. You ask if they want tea or coffee and watch them struggle with what should be a simple choice. Their brain can't weigh options anymore. Every decision, no matter how minor, feels monumental. This is when you need to start making decisions for them gently, without highlighting their inability to choose. Some families panic and rush to doctors, convinced this is Alzheimer's appearing overnight. But rapid cognitive decline in someone already showing other end-of-life signs usually isn't a separate disease process. It's part of the systematic shutdown. Medical intervention won't reverse it because there's nothing specific to treat. The entire system is failing gradually. You might see moments of startling clarity punctuating the confusion. They'll suddenly be completely themselves for 10 minutes, sharp and present and engaged. Then just as quickly they're gone again, back in the fog. These lucid intervals can be cruel because they remind you of who they were, making the contrast with who they're becoming even more painful. But treasure these moments. They're gifts. Nighttime often brings worse confusion. Sundowning, they call it. As evening approaches, disorientation intensifies. They might not recognize their own home, insist they need to go somewhere, become agitated or frightened. This happens because the brain's circadian rhythms are disrupting. The body's internal clock, already struggling, completely loses its bearings when darkness falls. Here's what helps. Keep their environment consistent. Don't rearrange furniture or introduce new routines. Familiarity provides anchoring points their confused brain desperately needs. Keep lighting gentle but adequate. Not too bright, not too dim. Speak slowly and simply, using short sentences. Don't quiz them on details or ask them to remember things. Remove that pressure entirely. When they say something that makes no sense, don't correct them. If your mother thinks she's 30 years old and needs to pick up her children from school, don't argue. Say something neutral like, "The children are fine." You're not lying. You're meeting her in her current reality because dragging her into yours will only cause distress neither of you needs. This cognitive withdrawal often frightens families more than physical decline. Watching someone's mind slip away feels like losing them before they're actually gone. But here's something crucial to understand. Even when they can't express it, even when they don't seem to recognize you, your presence still registers. The deepest parts of the brain, the ones that process comfort and safety, those often remain functional until the very end. So keep talking to them, hold their hand, play music they loved, create a peaceful